Hi, I'm Beth. This is Read Remark, and today we're going to take the Books in the Freezer Readathon Challenge. Books in the Freezer is one of my favorite podcasts. Basically, they just talk about horror books for about 45 minutes. Really awesome, right? So they have put forth a challenge in October called the Books in the Freezer Readathon Challenge, in which they put forth 5 different challenges, and you get to fulfill them with all of your horror reading wish fulfillment books. Now, first a disclaimer, I am notoriously bad at readathons. I usually don't really have time or self-discipline to actually read along with the other thoners, and so I'm going to cheat a little bit on today's challenge, and instead of presenting a TBR, I'm just going to present books that I would recommend in each of those categories with only one TBR book, because that is all that I really trust myself to commit to. So, without further ado, let's get right onto the challenge. Number 1, read a horror book by a female author. For this first challenge, I'm going to recommend a novella called The Birds by Daphne du Maurier. Chances are a lot of you have already read this in middle school or high school. It's a classic story of a farm family who has become overrun with birds. Now, you may remember this was made into a famous movie in the 1960s, I believe, by Alfred Hitchcock. I loved the movie adaptation, even though it was not really faithful to the book. The book was a lot more rural. They didn't have these fabulous urban people who came in from out of town. It was a lot more isolated, and it was a lot more bleak. Now, Daphne du Maurier, legend has it, hated the movie. She hated it because it was such a departure from her story. It was a little too Hollywood, maybe, but I would highly recommend it. Definitely read it because the story is a lot more disturbing than the movie, but both are good things to tune into. Challenge number 2, read a short story or anthology. For challenge number 2, I'm going to recommend Strange Weather by Joe Hill. Joe Hill is one of my favorite authors. He's written such books as The Fireman, 20th Century Ghosts, Nosferatu, many, many more. This collection of short stories has 4 different ones. The first one is called Snapshot, and it seems really reminiscent of Stephen King's novella Sundog. I think it's called The Sundog, where a boy finds a haunted camera. The next story is called Loaded. It's about a disturbed security guard, and I think that's the one that got me the most. The guy is mentally unhinged. He has the guns to back up his anger, and it's not supernatural at all. The horror is more in the human experience. The third story in that short story collection or novella collection is Adrift. Truth be told, I couldn't pay attention to it enough to be able to tell you what it was about. I'm sure it's good. The final story in that collection is called Rain, and it literally starts raining nails. It shows people who get caught out in the rain, and it's really, really, if you want the blood, there it is. Challenge number 3, read a horror book by a person of color or someone who is LGBTQIA. For this challenge, I would recommend The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor LaValle. He is an author of many horror books such as The Changeling, but The Ballad of Black Tom is kind of his answer to H.P. Lovecraft. As a child, Victor LaValle really looked up to H.P. Lovecraft and these, crazy science fiction horror books that he would write, and it kind of fed his inner desire to be a writer himself. And when he found out that H.P. Lovecraft was really kind of a horrible person and a huge racist, it was not a good experience for him. And so The Ballad of Black Tom is his answer to that. It's a take on one of Lovecraft's stories. I believe that this story is set in 1930s-ish Harlem. Tom is an African-American courier. He can't really hold down a 9-to-5 job, nor does he really want to, because he saw his dad try to do that and get paid a pittance. The reality of African-American life to him is real and always on his mind, because he has to be aware of where he is, when he is, make sure his body is not in the wrong place at the wrong time. He gets mixed up in some supernatural things that seem beyond his control. I would highly recommend it. Number 4, read a horror book that has a movie adaptation. Okay, for this one, I'm definitely going to recommend Bird Box by Josh Malerman. I'm going to put out a video on that one because I loved that book so incredibly much. But a quick rundown is that there are monsters who, if they walk across your path and you see them, then you'll want to kill other people and yourself. So, interesting setup. This woman has to escape with her 2 4-year-old children to a different place, but has to do it completely blindfolded because she and the children cannot risk seeing the monsters and wreaking havoc upon themselves. Number 5, read a book recommended on the podcast. All right, this is one I haven't read yet, but one I'm very much looking forward to. It's called The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. It's basically a home invasion book in which a girl and her 2 dads have their home invaded by some bad guys, and that's really all I know about it and all I really want to know about it going into it. I want to just experience the book fresh. But when you think about home invasion movies, for example, like Them, or Funny Games, or Hush, or even The Purge, I mean, just the idea of a home invasion is so incredibly creepy because that's your safe place. That's supposed to be your haven from all the monsters and scary things in the world. And so for something to breach that safe place and bring horror right into your home is just, to me, terrifying. So it should be really good. All right, that's all I've got for today. I can't wait to see what you guys are reading as well, and I can't wait to tune in to the next episode of Books in the Freezer. Should be a nice and spooky month. Thanks for tuning in. I'll check you next time. Bye.